Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name is Aron.
And we are your hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. Aron, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for inviting me to this show.
Thank you for joining us.
I do have to say that I'm not that good at trivia, so.
I'm sure you are as far as video games are concerned, right?
You know what? My video game experience is a little skewed. As I was growing up, I never had a console.
Okay.
Although I did buy some consoles once I was making my own money, I just didn't latch onto it. I was always a PC gamer and then a little mobile. And even on the PC side, I spent most of my life in Korea. So I'm more familiar with Korean games than Western games. Although I'm trying to catch up a lot.
If your home is Korea and you say Korean games as someone in the United States, what does that mean? Is there a difference between a Korean game? What are the main differences between what you would say a Korean game and an American game?
Well, when I started my career, that was around 1998, 1999. And in Korea, the console game development didn't really form back then. There were, 1 to 2 studios here and there. They were never that big of a success. But starting around 97, 98, I believe, it was the start of a new era where it was online PC games is what we used to call them. And it was mostly a lot of RPG games. During those times, I think we called it was a mud game with graphics. So I think they first started calling him a graphical mud or something like that, And then after that, it was always online.
And for our listeners, mud is multiple user dungeon.
Yeah. I started my career at Nexon, and Nexon was one of the companies that started making graphical mud games.
I was just about to ask you if you worked at Nexon, because that's what I think of when I think of Korean games.
So spending a lot of time in online PC games, My childhood favorites are the ones from Sierra Online. I used to live in Oklahoma when I was in elementary to junior high.
Okay.
And during those times, I, snuck onto my father's computer and played King's Quest, Hero's Quest, and maybe at night when everybody's sleeping, play a little bit of Leisure Suit Larry, if you remember that game.
Yes, I do. My stepfather absolutely loved that game. And he was the one who had the PC in the house. So he would be playing that at night. And then whenever we would drive somewhere, he would tell us what happened in the game the night before, which is funny because that dynamic is usually flipped. We're talking about the arcade game or whatever it is that we're playing. To him, it was opposite. So, yes, those Sierra Onlines, the point and click adventure games, did you get into like the LucasArts ones at all? Or
Oh yeah. So the one that I liked about, King's Quest, Space Quest, Police Quest series, I played the original version, not the remastered one, with better graphics, with a lot of clicking and multiple choices, conversations and stuff.
Right.
You actually had to type in your own commands, like sit down, break window, open door, that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. As I was growing up, I always thought of a game as, hey, I put it in the computer, start playing, maybe for a couple days or maybe a couple of weeks, I finish it, right? And there's a conclusion to it. But starting my career in online PC game industry, it was more of I don't know what the end is, but I'm just keep on playing. It felt more like social engagement with other people that's playing in the server more than anything. But now, like any type of game is endless, right? There's a lot of games that just keep on adding more contents. And now I think a lot of people use the term game as a service than a, conclusive title.
Right. What are your thoughts on games as service?
Well, I've been in the games as a service industry for most of my career. As a developer, it can be a very lucrative way to make games and service it to players. As a player, I think at some point it becomes more of a peer pressure. Like if there's friends sort of pressuring you to keep on playing, you're
Right.
playing it for month in, month out. I remember playing World of Warcraft on my work laptop for about 6 months. And the laptop died because there was so much disk I/O. The hard drive just burnt because I was like holding the laptop on my lap, moving around. The main board also like cracked.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I stopped. But being in that industry for such a long time, there's a lot of, upsides to it as a player and developer. One downside of working on a game as a service is there's no end to this product. You just keep on grinding and grinding, adding new contents. It can be a little tiring. So the product that I'm working on right now, everyone on our team has been in that game as a service industry, but we were like, you know what? Let's just try to make a game. It's conclusive. There's a start and end to it. You can play it, enjoy it. You sell it as a package, and there's no bi-weekly updates that we have to push out.
Right. Yeah. If you think of games as service, their lifetime, let me give you an example for me, the game Warframe.
Yep.
I played Warframe for about 5 years pretty consistently. And then I got to a point where it was just like, I'm done with it. And I think with games as service, you run the risk of getting to a point where you're just like, that's it, I'm done. And you lose that revenue stream or whatever if you're a company, right? And then those games back in the late 90s, early aughts, the Nexon games, one of my favorite ones was, you guys did Maple Story, right? That was one of the ones.
Yep, Maple Story.
The one that I used to play a lot of was Dungeon Fighter Online.
Oh, yes. Dungeon Fighter Online is a Nexon game as well. They terminated service in US in 2013 or 14, I think.
Yeah.
But it's going strong in China. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it is one of the biggest titles that Nexon has.
Yeah.
And it probably is around like still, 40-50% of their revenue comes from that.
So, oh, wow. Okay.
And it's over 10 years. And Maple Story is over 20 years. And it's still going strong. So
okay. And Vindictus was also another one that I played.
I really like that one too. Yeah.
To me, when I was playing it on my laptop, it felt like a PlayStation game. It had these elements, you had your boss fights and all these things. It just felt like a console game, but it wasn't. And you could, pair up with people and whatnot. So speaking of your game, the word this week is the word iteration. As you were talking about games as service, that's kind of what I thought of is like, well, how do you add to the experience? It's sort of, you're doing the same thing, but you're trying to add more stuff and improve it.
Yep.
Iteration. What is the first thing you think of when you think of that word?
I think of it as a good way to start on anything. If you're building something or if you're learning something, it takes iteration for you to improve on anything, right? I sometimes get stuck on like, I need to do something, but I get stuck because I'm like, when I start working on it, I want to do it perfectly, right? But if you think about it, just keep on, planning or thinking about it before you start, it takes days or weeks until you get anything done. But if you think of it as, you know what, let's just get started and make something or write something or build something. The first version is not going to satisfy even your needs or the customers or whoever you want to show it to, right? So It's always you start on something, get feedback from yourself or from your friends or your community, and you can keep on iterating, making it better. One of the great so I think online games or games as a service, they do this all the time. They create a feature or system in the game. They run it for, however month, but if nobody is using it, they will slowly like sunset that feature and then, change it a little bit so that it works better, right? And then rebrand it and put it in again and do that multiple times until it really works out well and everybody loves it. So it's a great way to learn how to make games or like a game as a service. If you have a decent enough product with enough people, it can be used as a platform for you to test a lot of different designs and different fun mechanics. Yeah.
What was your role at Nexon?
When I was still in college, I was a part-time programmer on this product called QuizQuiz.
Okay.
It's like a trivia show. You go into find a lobby with 4 people. The game throws you questions and you try to answer. And the one with the highest points wins the match. And I think historically, That game is the first game that actually put in microtransaction in games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it started selling avatars, hats, cosmetics and stuff. I worked on it until it went on beta, and then I went back to school to get a graduate degree.
Okay.
And then the next time I joined Nexon was I worked with my friends who made MapleStory, and they sold MapleStory to Nexon. And then they, after a couple of years, became independent again and set up another company. And I joined that company, which made another, MMORPG. I think it was, it was still a side-scroll MMORPG. And then we ended up selling that company again to Nexon. And then somehow, because I was one of the few people in Nexon that both spoke English fluently enough and have been into game development, that our American branch, it's called Nexon America. They're the ones who service the games that you play, the MapleStory in the US and Vindictus and Dungeon Fighter. They told me to move over to US. And when I moved over, it was around 2010. And that's when Facebook games were the big thing.
Right.
So started working on social games, but it didn't last long. And then I moved on to making mobile games for a couple more years. And then I became independent. I came out, moved to Seattle, and did my own thing ever since.
That's really a cool development arc. Just the fact that you got a lot of experience in Nexon, which is, if it's not the biggest Korean game company, it's got to be pretty close.
It is the biggest right now. They used to call it like big threes, Nexon, NCSoft, and then that was sort of faltered and it became Nexon, NCSoft, and Netmarble.
Yeah.
But I think as of last year, I think Nexon became the biggest one in terms of revenue and everything else.
You bring up NCSoft. One of the games that I used to play all the time was City of Heroes and City of Villains. And at one point in time, that was acquired and then shut down, I think, by
NCSoft, yeah. It sounds familiar. I don't know if NCSoft made it and sold it to somebody else, or somebody else serviced it and sold it to NCSoft. It was one of those cool games. It would have been a Marvel equivalent type of game, right?
Yeah. And that was at a time where superhero stuff was kind of not really quite at the level it is these days. These days it's common knowledge, but back then it was your fringe, geeky, nerdy types like myself, or, read comic books and whatnot. But it was it was one of my favorite MMOs at the time, and they made some really interesting improvements and choices, and I played that for a long time before I discovered Dungeon Fighter Online. And I was like, when it first came to the US, I was like, this is just like a side scroll and beat 'em up, except it's like an RPG sort of too, because you're developing your character. It was such a cool idea. Back to iteration. Let me go over the definition really quick. It's a noun, the repetition of a process or utterance, repetition of a mathematical or computational procedure applied to the result of a previous application, typically as a means for obtaining successfully closer approximations to the solution of a problem. And then also, I think in the sense that we're talking about, a new version of a piece of computer hardware or software. The app is on its 10th iteration. The origin, late Middle English from Latin, iteratio, from verb iterate. So that is iteration. The use of iteration over time in print. Have you ever looked at the Google Ngram viewer, Aaron?
What's an Ngram viewer?
So the Google Ngram viewer, it's a statistical sort of thing where they track a word's use in print. So if you look up a definition.
Oh yeah. I used to look this up quite a bit.
Iteration, you've got it at a level that's very consistent, and then all of a sudden it skyrockets in 1950, which kind of makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does.
Because of computing and stuff, and now it's maintained its level here. So that is iteration. You were talking about iteration being a method of development, right? Or creation. The thing that I thought of, which I don't know how really viable it is, people talk about waterfall, the method of developing. It's step, 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 and then you've got a completed product and it's done. And that doesn't seem to be a way to innovate. Just doing the project and then putting it out there and that's it, and not getting feedback or anything, it may be okay for something that is more akin to an art kind of thing and not like something that you're trying to make money on.
I think for waterfall process of development, I think, it could work on products that have a lot of known design elements and issues that they have solved before, and they know the spec, they know exactly what they're doing. It might even be a repetition of what they did before, but with a different type of product.
Right.
So there's nothing that's unaccounted for, right? There's no innovation. You're just doing the same thing,
Right.
but at a quality. If you know all the things that you have to watch out for, it could work. But I think for, products like gaming or anything that has to do with user interface, if you're adding just slight bit of new stuff in any product, then it will require a lot of iteration to perfect it, because we just don't know how it's going to turn out and how it's going to be received by customers.
And that is from a point as far as a product that you're selling, right? As opposed to
exactly
an expression, which I think video games, it kind of does two things simultaneously. It is an expression. It is art sort of itself.
Exactly, yeah.
But then also you've got this part that is you're trying to appeal to an audience. You're trying to do both, wear both hats at the same time a lot of times.
Well, and then there's a technical piece where in order to be able to create something that you appeal to others or something that's more artistic, there's something new that you have to develop or something advanced that needs to be in there for it to shine, right? So there's actually three, I think, spectrums of complexity that adds on to product like games.
You're talking like a bit of like polish or honing these things to,
like if you want to put in an amazing fog, it's not just art or your concept design. It also has to work on PC and it needs to work smoothly. Sometimes your engine doesn't support it, so you have to write, your own proprietary code to it and all that, right? So there's a lot of technology that goes into it as well.
Right. So do you guys have your own proprietary engine for your product, or is this something that you use?
We do not. We're using Unreal.
Okay. Do companies develop their own engines anymore, or is that something that is pretty much a thing of the past, do you think?
I have heard of few companies that have created their own engine. I think I recently read an article that this one company is working on a AI engine that helps you build games.
Okay.
And they got an insane amount of funding from big investors. There has been a number of different engines out there, right? The Unity is one of the newer ones. Well, not anymore. It's been around for about 10 years, more than 10 years now, right?
Right.
And what else? Oh, it's been such a long time since
Unreal, and then you've got, didn't Steam and Valve have one that was specific to?
Yeah. Source Engine was from Valve.
Source, that was it.
But I think, nowadays the Unreal Engine and Unity have, I think, democratized game development so much.
Yeah.
And, back in the days, Unreal, you had to pay big lump sum amount to start using it. Now they've opened it up to, solo developers where it's like, you can start using it for free and it's subscription based and all that. So it saves so much time.
Crytek, I think that was the one I was trying to think of.
CryEngine was
the CryEngine.
Crytek had CryEngine, yeah. And I don't think Crytek uses it anymore either.
What was the other one? Oh, don't talk about Frostbite. But that's the Electronic Arts engine that anyone who's worked there hasn't had many good things to say about Frostbite, because they try and use it for everything, or at least they used to. Those are the ones that I remember.
I think recently a lot of some of the 2D game developers are using Godot.
Oh yeah, I saw Godot. Yeah, is that strictly just for sort of retro and 2D? Because I don't know as much about it.
I haven't used it, but I do believe you can create 3D games with it. But I think it works for certain types of games. I don't think I can make a game like our game Pizza Bandit with Godot engine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So there is no plan to make a 16-bit version of Pizza Bandit or anything.
No, we
No.
don't have. No.
But anyway, yeah, let's get into Pizza Bandit, because when I played it, boy, I was really surprised at how much fun I had. You know, you said that there were some sort of inspiration drawn from Outriders, which I really liked Outriders. I had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, wow. You're one of, I think Outrider has very split reviews, I believe. Like, I personally enjoyed it, but I do, it does feel a little bit repetitive at certain points. I really love the combat. And they spend a lot of time on storytelling and graphics. So
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing game. But I think right off the bat, they had a lot of issues with the server and all that. So
People Can Fly, I mean, that's one of those game companies, if I ever see anything coming from them, I know it's going to have some quality. Another one that I really love was Bulletstorm. I think it was first person though, but still, it just had a lot of things where you would juggle and try and... It was more like style points. They tried to put a kind of a Devil May Cry spin on it, where you would get extra style points for using things in the environment to take out enemies and whatnot.
That's cool. Outrider is, one of the games that inspired us. Payday and Deep Rock Galactic, Alien Fireteam Elite. Those are the similar style of game. We do try to make it a little bit more intense, keeping the session a little shorter because it can get so intense. And some of the games that I just mentioned are, some of them are third-person shooter, some of them are first-person shooter, but I think the type of excitement that we want to get out of it is very similar. Left 4 Dead is also, I think, we try to take a little... I think one of the elements that we take from Left 4 Dead is, you have this sense of getting chased all the time by zombies. If you trigger something, or if you throw one of those loud bombs, or try to fight one of those witch zombies, like a bunch of others come at you.
Right.
And then you're like, you're shooting, but you're also trying to run away. And yeah, that kind of like overwhelming sensation is something that we try to shoot for. And you get a little bit of excitement or a sense of achievement when you clear them out and still be able to complete your mission.
Right. In Left 4 Dead, where it's fun to play with multiple people.
100%.
You can try and play it by yourself, but it's not nearly as much fun as it is with a group. You mentioned the whole difficulty and exhilaration of getting over things. When we spoke at PAX this year, you mentioned a failed project. I did a little bit of research and I found that it was called Rift Sweepers. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay. Is that something that's still being worked on, or is that No, it was completely scrapped?
Yeah. So, that sense of exhilaration by overcoming that very challenging and difficult situation, it just turns out the Rift Sweepers, we just didn't know how much most of the players could handle. And, if you work on a game for over a year, you get better and better and better at it, right? But to make things worse, our game director and lead designer, he is one of the top tier shooter players.
Okay.
So he will play every single game that has difficulty system. He would play it at the maximal difficulty, and he tries it for a while. And then he's like, this is too easy. And then he moves on.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned difficulty. Iteration is sort of a thing we do when we play as game players. We repeat this experience over and over again, and as a result, we get better and better and better and better. It's an iterative sort of process, right? So then we need either more difficult situations or the same old fun game mechanics with maybe a little bit of a twist to them. You know what? Back to... So this developer you're talking about, right, with Rift Sweepers.
Yes.
Did you take anything from that game structurally or programmatically? Did you have to start from ground up with Pizza Bandit? Because there are parts of it that kind of look similar to me.
So this is how Pizza Bandit started. We worked on Rift Sweepers. We opened it up on Steam as early access, and few people that played the game or like, this is unplayable. Why don't you just make enemies invincible, you know? I joined the team after they released Rift Sweepers as early access.
Okay.
And I was playing the second updated version, which was a little bit dumbed down version of the original one. And I was still way too difficult for me. I'm just getting the rate of the new enemy spawn was about 3 times faster than rate of me killing enemies.
Yeah, that's a losing proposition.
And enemies spawn like every 5 to 10, I think every 5 seconds. From that, that's how it felt to me.
Right.
So we're like, you know what? Let's scrap this. With 75% negative review, we can't revive this product. Let's just kill it and let's start new. But the way we started new was we didn't start writing code from ground up. We did reuse a lot of stuff that we had from Rift Sweepers.
Uh-huh.
But the first thing we did was, you know what? Then let's try to design a simpler mission, and see what the right amount of difficulty is and right amount of challenge and pacing that we can add to the game so the player actually can have that kind of exhilarating excitement and adrenaline pumping feeling and still be able to beat it at more than 1% of the time, right?
Right.
So we put that together in about 2 to 3 months. And then we took that to a couple of indie shows in Korea, and then PAX West last year. So our 4-month build with a lot of the assets that we reused from Rift Sweepers and some of the assets that we purchased from Unreal Store.
Okay.
We put it together into a small, more like an engine demo, and brought it to PAX West last year, and we had that insanely good shooter person be on ground at PAX West floors to meet with the gamers and see how they play and hear their feedback and all that. And that mission is still in the game, but we changed the setup of that mission about 30, 40 times.
Oh, wow. And by setup, what do you mean the setup? What does that mean exactly?
So everything from how much bullet you have, how fast your gun shoots, how faster your pistol shoots, how many bullets you can get from the mission by killing enemies, where enemies spawn, how much their health is. We put a lot of effort in making that mission interaction during combat very challenging.
Right.
And the actual action that we first put in was there was this machine that spits out a disk, and then you put that into a mainframe to hack the mainframe in the middle. That will help you disable the laser that's blocking the safe.
Okay.
But after a couple shows, there were a lot of younger players that asked us after playing the demo, what is a disc? They have never seen a disc before. They thought, what? This is a frisbee disc? Or what's a disc?
It's like you ask a kid to pantomime a telephone for you. And back in our day, it was like you'd use a banana. But nope. Now you just use the palm of your hand is what they do. So yeah, what
exactly.
is a disc?
And not many people know what what the telephone booth looks like, right? Yeah, so we're like, this is wrong. So everything from just the design element of what actual mission that you're performing, where it's placed, how it's placed there, the sequence of it, and see how quickly the waves come, how many of them come, what's the combinations of enemies. We changed this around so many times. And every time we made a significant enough change, we would take it to, I think after PAX, there was a little smaller indie show in December in Korea last year. And then in January, we took it to Taiwan, and then we went to PAX East, and then earlier this year, and then Level Up, and then PAX West last month, right? So
right.
Every time we go through that cycle, the game ends up changing a lot. And right now, a couple of things that we are working on after showing the game at PAX West and meeting with some of the folks who played it at PAX and listening to their feedback. We are trying to figure out how to make Pizza Bandit more befit the name Pizza Bandit.
Okay.
Because he runs a pizza shop, right? And he goes to missions, and a lot of those missions have cooking elements where you're cooking pizza and sending it into a delivery pod, or cooking sushi and putting it on a sushi restaurant carousel. There's a lot of those, but I think we got a lot of feedback saying that the pizza itself, the theme of pizza, is a little bit lacking. There's no, what do you call it, a core that makes this game Pizza Bandit. So we're trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Are you talking about like from a story perspective? Are you talking about?
Well, not just story perspective, but also like the actions that you're performing in the game. Like we use bandit as a not as a thief or robbery or robber or like that. We call it a bounty hunter that does some shady bounties, not like bounties that's officially issued by the legitimate government told body. But so we're not stealing pizzas, right? He's working as a bounty hunter to make enough money so that his pizza shop can survive, but there's nothing happening in the pizza shop.
Is the time travel element still something that you're thinking about?
Time travel is still something. Yes, he travels time in it's his we call it a time bounty, right? So he's a bounty hunter in a world where time travel is possible but regulated. So he's illegally traveling into different time or different dimensions or whatnot to either retrieve or perform certain actions that your clients ask you to.
Okay.
For
kind of like the movie Looper. Did you ever see the movie Looper?
Yes, I have seen movie Looper. Have you watched the animation like Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite ones. It's like Cowboy Bebop but there's a time travel element in there. So sometimes you go there to save someone or steal something or destroy something or cook something, right? But I think after doing a lot of these shows and iterating on the product, we felt that a lot of the players who tried our game actually really gravitate towards the cooking side of the missions. So and it just makes sense as a game that's called Pizza Bandit to have a lot more cooking in it. Yeah. And cooking and shooting is a kind of a ridiculous combination to put in a game, which I believe works pretty well. So
the main character, he's got a pizza restaurant, right?
So he's a ex-mercenary, right? He was more of a combat type person all his life, but he always wanted to open a pizza shop. So with all the money that he made from being a mercenary, he put into a pizza shop. But mercenary or combat does not really help with making good pizzas, right? So his pizza shop is failing. A lot of bad decisions. Not that he's just a bad cook. He doesn't know how to manage a restaurant. So it's a terribly disgusting place. Not well kept. Food is bad. It's not making enough money. So he's just about to go under, and he's forced to take on his old gig, which he's good at, to make money so that he can keep his dream alive.
Right. What about, and this is where I'm going with this. So you're familiar with Chicago deep dish pizza, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got your New York style pizza. Uh-huh. And then you've got pizza as it is made in Italy or whatever. What about him realizing that he's got to improve his pizza skills? so he takes jobs that are specific to like your big pizza making areas. So are you a pineapple on pizza person or not?
No,
Okay.
I am not. I am a pizza purist.
Yes.
I used to be a pineapple person, but after experiencing a lot more variety of pizza, after traveling to a lot of different places, I have become a purist, and I'm more of a Napolitan style pizza person.
Nice. Yep.
Still haven't been to Naples though.
Do you know where the Hawaiian pizza was invented?
I always thought Hawaiian pizza was invented by Domino's. Tell me
No,
so.
no, it is Canadian.
Oh, really?
In Ontario, Canada in 1962 by Sam Panopoulos, Greek-born Canadian.
Wow.
And apparently it was inspired in part by his experience preparing Chinese dishes, which commonly mix the sweet and the sour. So this was back in 1962, Ontario, Canada. So we have the Canadians to curse. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank.
No, thank. Yeah. I'm wondering if he was able to, get a patent for it and get paid by Domino's.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. Let's see here. Pineapple. In Germany, Hawaiian pizza is thought to be a variation of the ham, pineapple, and cheese top toast Hawaii. I don't know. Hawaiian is the most popular pizza in Australia in 1999, accounting for 15% of pizza sales. That's an interesting fact. Wow.
So he iterated on the toppings for how to make pizza, right?
He took his experience with a different sweet and sour sort of approach in a different cuisine and applied that taste or that approach to something like pizza. I hear that they do some of these interesting approaches to pizzas in Japan, but I've never been in Japan. I've heard things like mustard on pizza and stuff, which just doesn't sound right to me.
I'm not sure about the mustard, but I think what's common, I think, in both Korea and Japan is sweet potatoes.
Interesting. Sweet potatoes.
So it's a little bit different than like the taro or yams here. The Asian sweet potatoes, they taste a little different. I personally like it more than typical yams that you get from Safeway or Whole Foods or whatnot.
Right.
They put it on the crust of the pizza. They put it on top of the pizza. They make sweet potato cakes. They make sweet potato everything.
In Japan and in Korea?
Yeah.
Huh. I never knew that. Interesting.
Now, if you ever have a chance to go to Korea or Japan, there are famous bakeries that make sweet potato bread that looks exactly like a sweet potato.
Huh. An actual sweet potato, huh?
Yeah.
But we're talking actual sweet potatoes. We're not talking, because yams and sweet potatoes, there's a confusing thing in the US where people mix them up. But you're talking about actual sweet potatoes and not yams. Interesting.
I think they're a lot sweeter, especially if you cook them for a long time. It starts secreting sugar. Like if you put it in the oven for about an hour and a half,
right,
you can see the caramelized sugar that's like seeping out from it and making a crust around it.
Yeah, that sounds good. A lot better than the other Korean delicacy that I just cannot bring myself to even eat. Kimchi. I just can't. It's just something, I tried it once. I just can't.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I'm not a big kimchi guy.
Huh.
But it's an interesting process, and I know my father really liked it a lot, but I just something about it just didn't.
I'd say it's a little acquired taste.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of people seem to like it because of that very complex flavor, but also freshness of it.
Right.
It's very strong, but sometimes it feels like it's cleansing your palate at the same time. It's a little weird. There's a lot of Americanized versions of it using Napa cabbage. I've had a lot of different iteration of the kimchi in a lot of the restaurants that I've seen in West Coast.
But it's nothing like at home.
I mean, I think it's just different. It fits in with different type of cuisines, right? So if you have a certain style a little bit more, I think, less spicier, but and less stronger. Kimchi sometimes can go really well with like dishes like pasta or pizza.
Okay.
But the original kimchi, it's just, yeah, it's so overpowering. You can't even taste what the pizza tastes like, right?
You can iterate on the kimchi and make
Exactly.
a variety that is not as overpowering. By not as overpowering, do you mean taste or smell or both, or
Both. I think it's both.
because they are related to? Maybe it's the smell that is the thing for me as opposed to the taste. But like I said, I tried it once, and maybe I'll try it again sometime. We'll see. We'll see. What sort of games do you like to play? Specifically a game that you're developing. And we can talk about, like, in your previous, you said you're not a trivia guy, so the trivia game that you worked on, you probably didn't play a lot of. But these games that you've developed, when does it become work? When is it fun, or is it a little bit of both for you? Like, what is working in games? Is it fun for you?
I think the most fun part is when you're working on a prototype, you're trying to put together a new idea, piecing together into a prototype, not as polished, but trying to create a core fun of it.
Okay.
It can get a little depressing and become more of a work if the prototype you thought of and you really want to make it into a product just doesn't work out, and try to find out how to iterate on it to make it actually fun. But sometimes it's whatever you do, it just doesn't work. Like that's the situation that gets really stressful. But
Okay.
trying to create a new thing from nothing, or having a benchmark game and trying to add your flavor to it, that's the most fun part of it, I think. And then when the core is fun and you're trying to put enough content into it, sometimes creating a different type of content is also fun.
Mm-hmm.
But if the amount of content that you need to create is so overbearing, then that becomes a bit of a stressful situation and becomes more work. When you're putting in content, if you're still like excited and motivated to come up with interesting content that you can add on, it can still be really fun. But when it's just like, all right, we put an avatar system, so we need to put shorts, pants, whatever, in a lot of different colors, some like very like minute iterations on that kind of like mass-produced assets or mass-produced text, or like those can be very stressful. When you make a game, there's a lot of system and there's a lot of mechanics and elements in a game that needs to be balanced together to make it a really good product, right?
Oh yeah, balance.
But and you are iterating on you think of, you have like this equalizer and you're putting it up and down and trying to make it all work, but you just can't, because there's so many combinations that you have to go through, you just can't find it. Then it becomes a really stressful situation, and if that situation lasts for however month that your company or executives can give you enough time for,
right,
then you either have to shut down the game or salvage whatever you have created and
iterate.
make a hard pivot. Well, not at that point, it's no longer iterate. You have to make a huge pivot. Like you are working on a shooter game, but you make a pivot to making it a RPG game or a puzzle game or something like that.
I wouldn't imagine that those big pivots would occur very often. Or do they? In the big, or there's probably a difference between what you're working on here and something like a Nexon.
Whether it's a small game or big game, I know there are titles that their first couple of revisions, iterations made a huge success.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the times, I think as the product gets slightly bigger, even not like a AAA $500 million budget game. Yeah. Even for the games that are like sub-$1 million budget games, the ones that made huge success that I've known and personally seen went through a lot of iteration, but at least 2 to 3 pivots.
Interesting.
I mean, and it depends on what is a pivot versus what is an iteration.
Right.
But
we talked a little bit about that during the interview that I had with you at the show. It's like, I think pivot is more of a going a direction kind of thing. It's like, well, which direction are we going to go? The iteration occurs when you start perfecting whatever direction or whatever product you are taking in that direction. Or, finding out what the magic formula is, the alchemy that is behind making the perfect, near perfect game, right? There is no perfect, but
I think when there's so if you put it into a timeline, when you're closer to the end, towards the end of the development timeline, then that's iteration for perfection, right?
Right.
But I think the first half, from beginning to like half of the development cycle, there are bigger iterations that can be seen as a small pivots that happens, right? Because you're still making you're still making a shooter game, right? But sometimes a mission-based shooter game turns into a endless shooter game, or can turn into a roguelike shooter game, or story-based, like those can happen, right? I think in the industry with my colleagues, if you are making a story-based shooter game and you change that into a mission-based roguelike shooter game, I think we would call that a pivot. But in the bigger sense of making a shooter game, it's still, you can also say it's a huge iteration.
Right. There's a lot of classifications of games that I think are done, like you mentioned roguelike, because it's a known quantity and people are trying to classify these things. But at the end of the day, a lot of games are just mashups of different elements. I mean, it doesn't fit into necessarily a clone. Well, in some cases it does, I guess, but
some cases it does, yes.
Yeah. When is the phase where you take design risks? Or is this something where in the development cycle, there are certain parts where you're very risk averse and you don't want to take risks? You want to focus on the more fine tuning part of it? Or are you always taking risks with design decisions or game decisions or mechanics?
I think for a smaller team, like us, and we kind of call ourselves indie developers, I think we end up taking more risks than how I used to when I was
like
working in a
Nexon.
bigger project.
Right.
Exactly. With a bigger budget, bigger project, it's really hard to make that kind of change, because it's not just because of the executive leadership expecting a certain type of product. It's also the type of people that you put together to work on that product, right? So when you're like, hey, I think we're going the wrong way, we wanted to go up the mountain, but I think we should be heading down to the wall, to the beach.
Right.
But if you hire a lot of like 50 hikers in your team and they don't swim, they don't want to go down to the beach.
No.
So it becomes an issue.
Yeah. It's a question of motivation at that point, I think, right? I mean, you've got your team.
Motivation, but also skills, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you pivot too much, there are a lot of skills that you already have that you don't need.
And then you also have skill deficits that you have to kind of rebuild or build.
But it does happen in bigger projects and bigger companies. But at that point, what happens is the leader of that project changes. The game director or the main producer or whoever who was leading the development, he changes to someone else and he reforms the whole team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens a couple times for a bigger project that can, that can happen more than once,
right,
which delays the product by, 5 to 10 years.
When you said that, the first thing that popped in my head was Anthem. Was the game Anthem. I mean, just like not really having a clear, I mean, you've got some interesting mechanics. You've got some fun in the way that these suits fly into things. And I enjoyed that, but it's just, it never really had a clear sort of idea what it wanted to accomplish. They had some concepts of things they wanted to do. They wanted to do this constantly changing world that impacts the way that they spawn in the world and whatnot, which probably has already been done by now. But back then it was kind of an ambitious sort of thing, right? But yeah, I mean, it's like taking risks and then, but also, you know, it's balance. It's definitely balance.
Yeah. And for the smaller team, if we try to add something that's a little bit lacking in the game towards the end of the product cycle, there's always a risk, but more risk on, I think, on the the financial side than anything else, because it takes time. So we're taking away time to do something else to do this, right?
Right. You have a finite amount of resources that you have to allocate.
Exactly. If you're lucky and be able to secure more investments or budget, then you can do this and try and see if it works out, and then you can build more and add the stuff that you wouldn't be making if you didn't do it towards the end, and try to get it in there. But it's you can't always get everything you want, and for Pizza Bandit too, we are always trying to balance between, we need to add these, we definitely need to have 10 of these and 20 of these and 15 of these in the game, but the current setup is lacking. So even if we put this in, game not be enough. So do we find something else that will make the game whole before adding these contents in, or like we're always in debate on what to do next.
So you know what, this brings up a question for me, as far as you said you traveled to these different shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a time in, even in console development and to some extent arcade games too, where the audience wanted different things. So when you show your game to audiences in Korea or in Shanghai or wherever, or in the United States, are you trying to please all of those different audiences, or are you taking bits and pieces from suggestions and just incorporating them based on what you think is going to be successful as a whole?
I think the way we enjoy the game in our studio, especially the shooter games, we are more a Western game audience.
Okay.
There's only two people, including me, that speaks decent enough English in our team. So we don't make the game in Korean and then turn it into to English. We make the game in English. And then we use ChatGPT or Google Translate to translate into Korean. So
Right.
Our Korean version is has a little bit of broken Korean in it.
Gotcha.
Whereas, the typical development would be the other way around, right?
Right.
So when we show this game to our Korean audience, the majority of the audience feel it's too difficult, especially the progression from mission to mission or battle to battle. They feel it's too abrupt. Whereas if I show it to the Western audience, they are excited to be fighting in a little and somewhat challenging mission, and they're okay to. Nobody likes dying during the mission, but they're like, hey, I think if I try it again, I can beat it, type of situation. Whereas in Korea, a lot of these game as a service, they try to hook you in, so they give you a lot of things to click on and try out in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you can give positive feedback for hours on end from the moment you start the game. So they're so used to that kind of progression that throwing you into this kind of very, very challenging, heart pumping battle, I think was a little bit too much for a lot of, especially if I show this to bigger game companies when we're looking for publisher. They're like, I think it's fun, but isn't it too difficult? Is what a lot of them say. Them comes back with, except for the players who enjoy playing games like Payday 2, Deep Rock Galactic. Oh, the game that I couldn't remember was Remnant.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Remnant 1 and 2.
Right.
So Remnant 1, when I played, I couldn't get into the first dungeon. I died before going into the first dungeon. But, it's you figure things out by yourself, or, with your friends or player that you meet inside the game to and get better, right? It is originally designed for Western. We do get really good feedback from our Eastern audiences, and we do try to put that into the game, but we only take in the ones that doesn't change the game into entirely something new, right?
Gotcha.
Like if we make it similar to like a PC online game, it's going to be way too boring in the beginning until it gets challenging. One of the player that participated in our alpha test in Korea was I think he's an even better shooter than our game director. I think he told us that he is #1 ranker on Doom in Korea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He cleared every single stage. He put in a lot of time to upgrade every weapon to its max level. And once he's done that, he cleared every single stage, getting no hits at all, shooting with 100% accuracy. And that accuracy was always on the head. Killed everything with a headshot.
And he enjoyed himself?
Well, he told us on Discord that on the day of the alpha test began, he took a day off to play through the game for the whole day.
Yeah.
I think he put in like over 50 hours.
Okay.
And we had 1 hour content in there.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's dedication.
Yeah, he gave us a lot of great feedbacks on how to make it more challenge for him without making it too difficult for other players and whatnot. So
interesting.
So a lot of iteration happens with every time we have chance to meet with the community.
And it's more of a global community. Even though you are developing it for a Western audience, you still incorporate that feedback.
Definitely.
Did you get a lot of good feedback from the show this year from PAX?
We had a lot of excited players saying that they're gonna be showing it to other friends and and put it into their go-to game for their game nights and all that. So it was great. Oh, and I think one of the coolest thing that I saw from the group that came in, we had players play in groups of 4 on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th day. I think it was 3 ladies and 1 guy that came in. One of them, she's not an action game player. She only plays like farm games.
Okay.
Stardew Valley or, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So very easygoing gamer. But they were like, hey, let's try it, right? So they sat down and played the pizza mission. You know how the pizza cooking station is on the 2nd floor?
Right.
And she doesn't know how to, she wasn't really good at, shooting or hitting or aiming or. So she was the chef, and other 3 were defending the kitchen station.
Right.
So
keeping the zombies off her.
No zombies came up there.
Yeah.
I think there was only 1 or 2 that came up.
Uh-huh.
So she made all 8 pizza by herself. She had so much fun. It was so much fun watching them play. They're like, hey, there's one going out. Go up to Sarah. I'm going to kill it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So this was the first time that we were able to showcase the cooking mission on the show floor, but it just, everybody really loved it. So I think we're doubling down on the cooking missions, making it more cooking worthy or Pizza Bandit worthy.
I just came up with another idea, a story idea. Maybe one of his missions is to eliminate the Hawaiian pizza from the timeline.
That's good. I like that. You know what? I like it, but looking at when you join our Discord, our Pizza Bandit Discord, we ask you a question. Are you a pineapple lover or are you a pizza purist, right?
Yep. I answered the pizza purist.
Surprisingly, it's 50-50. So I don't want to...
Don't want to offend other people. Listen, it doesn't have to be successful. It just has to be he tries to, and then all of a sudden he realizes whatever. But I mean, just like as a story thing, I think it would be funny.
Maybe we could make it a little choice thing where. So there is a mission where you have to save a professor who's working on time machine.
Okay.
So he's up in the snowy cabin. You have to warm up his cabin and then you have to cook for him, and you have to defend him from Time Reapers that are trying to kill him because they don't want the time travel to be discovered by humans.
All right.
So the whole mission is keep him alive until he finishes his work.
Right.
When he finishes the work, you can take that gizmo that he created and just shoot him. You can kill him and leave and still be a success.
Oh,
so
wow.
We could do something similar. You go to when the pineapple pizza is discovered.
Ontario, Canada, 1962.
A lot of maple leaves, you know. You either keep him alive or kill him before he finishes it. Yeah, and burn his place.
But that doesn't mean someone else isn't going to come by and event it later. It just means that you've eliminated that version.
Exactly.
Maybe you can just make up a time when, like, you know, it was earlier than that, and that person is the one who was supposed to invent the Hawaiian pizza, but you eliminate them, and then someone else
and then
later.
You become the inventor.
Yeah, you could become the inventor of the Hawaiian pizza too if you wanted to, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's always going to happen regardless. It's like one of those, the time machine things where it's like,
you know what, that could be on its own game, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what to call it, but the whole game is about trying to prevent pineapple pizza from being invented.
Yep. Thank you so much, Aron, for joining us on this week's episode. It was a lot of fun talking about iteration and how you guys are developing your game. Other than tell people to wish list Pizza Bandit on Steam, I'll put whatever links you want me to in the show notes. But is there anything else you want to pitch before?
Thank you for inviting me to this very exciting and fun chat.
Yeah, I hope you had fun.
Pizza Bandit, of course, please wishlist the game. You can find it at bandit.pizza. It'll take you right to the Steam page.
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to call ourselves Cooker Shooter. I don't know if it's going to stick, but
okay.
we found this cooking side of the game so much fun that we're going to try to see if we can make that the whole theme more, what do you call it?
More central to the
more central to our game. You can play with your friends. It's hilarious. It can feel like a party game.
I'm excited to see what you guys do with it.
We're planning on going early access early next year.
Okay.
Hopefully earlier, but you know, it might take a little longer if this new pizza shop idea becomes fully fledged and we start working on it. It might add a couple of more weeks or months to it, but still, it's going to be a better game for it. So please watch out. Look out for Pizza Bandit, and you can always join our Discord. It's on the link on our Steam page. So
thank you, Aron, and thank you, audience, for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben.
And my name is Aron.
And we've been your hosts. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye-bye.